One of the questions that people ask Christians is, why is Good Friday called Good Friday? Surely it wasn't a very good day, for it was the day that Jesus was crucified. Well, I'm sure you all know the story well. Matthew chapter 27 verse 11 onwards tells us about Jesus going on trial, Jesus being flogged and mocked, and then Jesus being crucified along with two other criminals, one on either side. But why do we call it Good Friday? Well, the first 5 books of the Old Testament are called the books of law: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. 5 books of law, which basically say that if you do this, or if you do that, then you're going to have to go and do this. Every action has a consequence in the Old Testament. The wages of sin, we're told in Romans 6 verse 23, is death. The cost of sin is death. The cost of doing something wrong is that something is going to have to die. If you do such and such a sin, you pay for that with a pigeon, or such and such a sin, you pay for that with a sheep or a goat or a cow. Various different costs. The animal that was used as a sacrifice had to be perfect. Now, in order for one to die for all, that one had to be perfect. Jesus was the only option. The only option. Being fully man and yet also fully God, Jesus was perfect. God, who created this law, said that one day this law will be no more. One day he will send a perfect sacrificial lamb in the place of all things. And we read about that in Hebrews chapter 10 verse 1 to 18. I'm just going to read verses 1 and 2 to you now. The law, Old Testament, first 5 books, the law is only a shadow of the good things that are coming, not the realities themselves. For this reason, it can never, by the same sacrifices repeated endlessly year after year, make perfect those who draw near to worship. If it could, would they not have stopped being offered? For the worshippers would have been cleaned once for all, and would no longer have felt guilty for their sins. Jesus, being the only perfect person able to fulfill all of this, was led like a lamb to the cross, where he paid that sacrifice for us. He paid the cost, which was death. So why do we call it Good Friday? Well, the events of that Friday are good news for you and for me. It means that you and I don't have to fear death. We don't have to worry or be afraid of what is to come. It means that all of our wrongdoing, from the point of our birth to the point of our death, has all been taken care of. Once and for all. That's what it says here in Hebrews. Because of Jesus' sacrifice, because of Jesus paying that cost for us, once for all, we no longer have to worry. Death was never meant to happen, but also sin was never meant to happen. But because of sin, death happens. Romans 6 verse 23 in its fullness says, "For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life for those in Jesus Christ." So because of the events on that Friday, it is good news for you and for me. From the 6th hour until the 9th hour, darkness came over all the land. About the 9th hour, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of those standing there heard this, they said, "He's calling Elijah." Then immediately one of them ran and got a sponge. He filled it with wine vinegar, put it on a stick, and offered it to Jesus to drink. The rest said, "Now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to save him." And when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. The light of the world had died.